Journal entries are the driving force of the FASB IASB Manager module. So we want to ensure that you feel confident in processing and posting them. And before ever attempting to process your journal entries, it's best practice to go into the module and review your revisions and your schedule for accuracy. So we will do that by navigating to the accounting menu and selecting FASB IASB Manager. Then we'll expand Calculations and Processing and select FASB IASB Revisions. From here, you'll want to select the lease in which you plan to process the journal entries for. So I'm going to click the Select Lease button. And then I could use the column filters here to search, or use the box in the top right to search for the lease that you want to process your entries for. So for this example, I'm going to search for my Scottsdale, Arizona lease. I'll select it by double-clicking. And that'll take me back to the revisions screen. Here we're looking at the various revisions associated with this lease. Now this one just happens to have one, but you may have instances where you have multiple revisions. But all FASB charges have a standard first revision where you can view or even manipulate the details, like your start and end periods, the classification, the interest rates, and things of that nature. However, once that revision has been processed and posted, it becomes locked. So any modifications to the lease that change the asset or liability would result in a new revision at that time. Now we can view some of these details here within the grid, but you'll get a more comprehensive look by selecting the revision and clicking the Edit button at the top. This will take you into the Edit FASB IASB Revisions screen. Here you'll want to review the information to be sure that it's accurate and up to date, because this right here is what feeds into and generates the schedule. Once you've confirmed the revision details are correct, you can close out of the pop-up. And back on the revision screen, you can select the FASB IASB Schedule button. This will take you into the schedule for the respective lease and charge. And just like with the revisions, you want to glance over this information, specifically for the period in which you're about to process, and review it for accuracy. So if we're hoping to process for the May 2020 period, I'll find that row on the schedule, select it so it's highlighted and easier to follow, and then work my way from left to right reviewing the details. This is a critical step you want to be sure not to skip, because the schedule is what drives the journal entries. So it's much easier to catch and correct a mistake here rather than skipping ahead to processing and potentially posting an inaccurate journal entry. So give your schedule a quick review, and then you're ready to head over to process FASB IASB, found under Calculations and Processing here on the left, and you're ready to begin processing your journal entries. There's a wide variety of filters available on this screen that you can use to segment your journal entries and control which leases are included in any given batch. So for example, if you wanted to process for all of your real estate leases at the same time, and then maybe have a separate batch for all of your equipment leases, then you could use the contract type filter here to do that. You could also filter by the billing type, the lease status, or even your different currency sources. And then down below, you have your location or property and lease level filters. Now, these two sections allow you to segment your batches by using your established property and lease groupings within your database. So if you wanted to process journal entries associated to a certain property, or maybe from locations within a certain state, or possibly those linked to a specific landlord, then these filters could be helpful for that. Now for our example, I want to use my Scottsdale, Arizona lease. So I'm going to choose the lease filter here and select Scottsdale. Now down below, there's 3 additional filter options seen in orange. You could filter by charge type, lease type, and lease status should you want to. Now, although you have tons of filters here to choose from, you don't necessarily have to use them. If you're looking to process just once for the month and be done with it, then don't set any filters here. This would generate a holistic batch of all your journal entries for all of your leases within your portfolio. So the filters are really just here for your convenience. Once you've established your desired filters, or lack thereof, you'll enter the month and year of the period in which you want to process within the enter period field here. So thinking back to our Scottsdale lease, if I wanted to process for May, then I'd enter 5/2020 in the enter period field. Now keep in mind, this will be dependent on how your client calendar has been configured within the accounting setup area of the application. So we'll go to accounting and select accounting setup. And the first tab here is the client calendar. So let's say, for example, I operate under a non-traditional 445 calendar. I need to review the calendar configuration to see which period aligns with the time frame that I'm attempting to process my entries for. So in this case, it looks like the bulk of May falls within these period start and end dates, which align with the 5/2020 period. So that's the period I need to enter on the process screen. It's important to note that the dates may not always align as you would expect them to, so it's worth venturing into the client calendar to ensure that you're using the appropriate period for your processing. Now, if this is your very first time processing journal entries, it's worth noting that AMT will allow you to start posting with any period in your schedule, meaning if your implementation date is January 1st, 2020, you could pick up with processing any period after that, like March of 2020, instead of starting strictly with January. However, once you post your first JE batch, you must process prospectively from that point forward. So AMT requires you to post your entries in chronological order, and it will not allow you to skip periods. So for our Scottsdale example, if I previously posted my entries for March of 2020, I couldn't jump ahead and proceed with processing May of 2020 right now. I would first need to go back and post for April 2020, and then I could move on to May. So as you get in the habit of going into AMT month over month and processing your entries, you won't think twice about which period you need to post for. But initially, it might take some getting used to. So rely on your client calendar and possibly use the last posted period report within Report Builder to help you out. Now, once you've entered the applicable period here, we're going to stick with 5/2020 for this example. You'll select Generate Report, which will take you into the notification screen. If there's any missing information or an error that's preventing your journal entries from being processed, you're going to receive a notification here telling you what that issue is. So you cannot move forward with these entries until that notification has been corrected. So just click the hyperlink that's associated to it, and it'll redirect you to the screen where you can correct the issue. Now, also on the notification screen, you'll notice two fields at the top that are meant to give you insight on the progress of your batch. So the processing percentage tells you how far along your batch is, and your position in the queue will let you know if your batch is in line behind others that are processing at the same time. So that could be batches that are processing within your database or possibly in other databases. Once you've made it to the top of the queue, you'll see the processing done at the top, and the Continue with Process button will become enabled. Go ahead and select Continue with Process, which will take you into the FASB ISB Calculate screen, where you can then view the journal entries and their various reports. The reports seen here are temporary reports that you'll want to review for accuracy prior to posting. So you want to do it prior, before ever posting your batch. The transaction report will give you a breakdown of your straight line totals for the period, while the journal entry report will display the debits and credits for your various accounts. So you can review these reports for all of your journal entries at the same time, or you can click a single record down here below and then select the report button. So that way it just runs for that lease or that entry. If after reviewing all of your information on the Calculate screen and reviewing your reports, if you then feel comfortable with the journal entries, you can proceed with officially posting the batch by clicking the Post button here at the top left. Now, the journal entries and their revisions will become historical data at that point once they've been posted, which means you can no longer make changes to them. So then moving forward, any changes made to the leases that impact either the asset or the liability would then be accounted for in a separate or a new revision. Now, before I post, one very important thing to keep in mind when processing your journal entries is while a batch is running or being reviewed, like we have here, certain areas of your system will become locked and uneditable, like the client profile, portions of Masterfield's management and accounting setup, your FASB recurring charges, and various other pieces. So if you've processed a batch but you don't intend to post it just yet, be sure to click cancel here at the top to clear out that batch. That'll unlock the mentioned areas of the system so that others are free to continue working. So if you're not planning to post, click cancel here. Otherwise, you're free to proceed with clicking post and posting the batch. After processing, reviewing, and ultimately posting your journal entries, you can then locate your batch in the batch history found under the reporting section here on the left. In this screen, you'll be able to view and download the exact same reports that were available when processing, and you can also export the batch from here. While the steps I just walked through are a great guide for processing your journal entries, I would also suggest checking out the Knowledge Center article titled Best Practices for FASB IASB Month End Close, because this has some additional steps and advice that you might find helpful. But just remember, review your revisions, review your schedule, review your reports, and then you'll feel confident in posting your monthly journal entries.